How you doing, legends? It's going to be a fun video here going through the Brisbane Heat's sort of projected lineup, a general idea of where guys are going to be. Obviously, we have some fringe type of players. We've got the fringies. And do we want them in our sides, even if they do happen to be sort of in and out of the team? And that's probably a no at this point. But we do have to see where they end up in a batting order. You're looking at a Josh Brown and Max Bryant. I think there's only space for one of them if that happens. Obviously, if guys are injured and things like that happen, then they will play more games across the tournament. But let's really get into the guys that we think are going to be getting a spot, and then really discuss their ability to score really well, gain lots of cash for your teams there in terms of your salary is going to be the biggest thing there. And a lot of those fringes you're looking at, can they get a 4-over spell each game? Can they sort of bat 5 or 6, 4, 5, 6 would be nice. And obviously earlier the better. Because a lot of times the 6 and 7 guys, if they're just batting, they might be coming in right at the end. It's very hard for them to get a whole allotment of points there. So we really will go through this Brisbane Heat side first. Wicket keepers, batters into the bowlers, and let's see if there's any value across any of these guys. So when you look at the Brisbane Heat's lineup to start with, they do have obviously the Aussies in Khawaja and Marnus. They're going to be out for that first part of the year. So they'll come back near the end and be of importance from that point on. But until that, we have a little bit of a reduction in the amount of good batsmen, I'd say. They're pretty top heavy there in Colin Munro, Billings, and then Matt Renshaw, who had a really nice season last year. Then you've got guys like Michael Neser, who's in obviously great form with the bat, obviously the ball as always. And you got Jimmy Pearson, who'll probably be around that 5-6 type of guy. The wild card for this side is going to be Paul Walter. So an English fellow who's played plenty of matches over there in his List A stuff, and is more of a batsman than he is a bowler. So he may bowl a little bit left armour there, but I think you're likely going to see him in the middle of the order here. The higher we can get him, the more value he's going to have in this side. The question will be, is he an all-rounder? Does he end up getting a few overs with the ball? Or do they have too many bowlers? And you look at kind of this projection from what I've got at this point. There's, Wildermuth is more a bowler. Obviously, you've got Bartlett, two guys that can bat a little bit, but, don't have incredible averages. You got Sweps and Kuhneman being the spinners, and then Spencer Johnson being the quick there. So you'd imagine they'll play Sweppo and Matty Kuhneman for sure, as well as Spencer Johnson being third. And then it'll be either probably one of the two of Wildermuth and Bartlett, just because they have Neser as a guy that's going to bat in sort of the middle. I've got him, that's sort of a general idea at the moment. Neser's in at 4. He'd probably be somewhere around that 5 mark, you'd imagine, in this side, if that's how they play it. Otherwise, I'll pop in a Josh Brown or a Max Bryant into probably that 4 position and push these guys a little bit further back. And then you're definitely missing out on one of Wildermuth or Xavier Bartlett, I'd imagine, in this order. And then maybe Walter is that guy that gets a couple of overs through the middle. So that's kind of how we see this thing. And obviously, the guys up top in Munro, Billings, and Renshaw, all at a fairly decent price there. Neser, we've spoken about him as a great captaincy option. If he's not in that test squad, we'll have to wait a little bit longer on that. Jimmy Pearson, you'll see, you kind of know what you're going to get for him. Walter, we're not sure of, so we will have to wait until that first game to make a decision on him there. So that's the Brisbane Heat right now. You got the fringies in Will Prestwidge, hasn't played too many games, just the 3. Brown and Bryan have both had a decent crack across the years. So let's go to the Brisbane squad there and have a little look at what we've got going on. So if you look at the wicket keepers there, Billings and Pearson, so both fairly cheap. You'd imagine Billings has a little bit more of an upside than that of Jimmy Pearson. Jimmy seems to be very consistent. Billings has the upside. So both wicketkeeper bat, both will play, at least that good first portion of the season, which you saw here with Billings playing 8 games. So this is when we want him. We want him at the start, and I definitely think Billings has the upside over Pearson. So Billings at the moment has been in my sides to start things off, but for obvious reasons, he's sitting at a mid to high 30s average, and he could definitely go a 40 plus here and have a little bit of value, along with playing 3 games in the first one. So that's what we got to look at here with round 1, is all of these Brisbane Heat players play 3 games. Okay, you look to the batters, and we got Neser, as we said, who really dominated last year at a 62.6 average. If he gets to play each and every game, then he's a clear captaincy option, given he plays 3 in that first one. Colin Munro and Renshaw, both guys that are pretty well at their ceiling. We've seen Munro go a little bit higher than this, but at a 156, you are bringing him in for the points only and not for value increase. So if you were to get a 50 out of him for each of those first 3 games, maybe it's an 80, maybe it's a 20, and then a 50, then you get that 150 for that first game, and that's very, very helpful. We obviously want a little bit more from Nisa than that of Munro, but you're still spending up for those points, which is, for the most part, you do have to do that. Renshaw had a really good year last year, the best of his career, and end up averaging 42. So you can see you got 11% that have picked him up. And again, you're grabbing him for the points scored rather than his value, because he'd much rather be going for a Sam Billings. He has a 25% ownership there than you would be going for anyone above that. Khawaja Labuschagne, obviously an Aussie duty. Nathan McSweeney was the other one. Why is he not in? Oh, maybe he got added after. That's interesting. Is he in there? Brisbane Heat. Oh, okay. That's strange. So he wasn't even in their list? That's weird. I'll have to find out what's going on with that, actually, because McSweeney's not even in there. And this was only posted like 5 days ago. I'll have to find out a bit more about that. So actually, I didn't have him in my list, but he would definitely slot into that middle of the order. He could be that number 4 that they're looking for instead of a Josh Brown or Max Bryant. So yeah, sorry, I was just putting that together and forgot that he wasn't in that actual squad list. So yeah, we'll find out more about that and get back to you. But he's one of those guys that if he happens to score anything like he did last year, he has plenty of value and could potentially be a little a bowling option as well if he gets that opportunity. So that's that with him. And then Paul Walter's the big one at 105k. So he has some value, and they've projected him here to hit a 45 average for that 3 round, which is a lot higher than all his counterparts in front of him. Shows that they think that he could come out and do a good job. So at 6%, he's a little bit undervalued at that point. He only has to average in the mid-30s to make some cash. Mid-30s to 40 would be great from him if you could get that out of him. But we need to find out where he's going to bat. If he's going to be a 5 or 6 and maybe bowl an over or 2, then I don't see a big appeal. Obviously, round 1, given he plays 3 games, if he comes out and dominates, then that could really help you have a really good start to your season. But otherwise, I think we just have to wait and see as to how they're going to use him, and maybe hear a little bit from coach, and then see what their sort of starting batting lineup's going to be before we make that decision, which makes it a little bit tough. And then you got Brown and Bryant there. Both didn't score amazingly in their games last year. Brown a 28 average at 10 games, not great. And Bryant obviously has had his struggles as well. So Chris Lynn, the one that's not there. Oh no, he's in Adelaide, I should say. Scratch that. It's so weird him not being as part of the Heat. It's just wild. So that's the batting side. Obviously, the bowlers in there as well. We've got Bartlett, who was solid last year for his 28 average. He's very much priced up. I think that's a little bit too high for what he's capable of. Spencer Johnson has decent amount of value there. If he can hit anywhere above that 40 average, which we definitely think he can. He's one of those guys on the way up. He's a good one to have a look in at the start here. Wildermuth is the interesting one. Obviously didn't play any games at all last year, so if he manages to get a crack in this squad, then there's definitely some value on him. They've got him projected at just under the 40 mark, which is pretty cool. And they've got Matt Kuhneman actually projected really high as well, which I think is probably a little bit too high. I would expect him to hit close to where he's averaging here, the 33.6, maybe a 35 to 40 at best. But for the other guys there in Wildermuth, injury is obviously an issue for him. So seeing how he comes out of it and how he looks is going to be really important. And then Sweppo is probably the big one there at 71,000. Had a really, really poor one last year, averaged 23 in his 13 games. He should go a lot better than that, and hopefully he will. So he's at that sort of rock bottom. He's going to play the majority of those games, and at 40% owned, I think he should be higher. But you do kind of have to play him. There's probably no point having him on the bench, I don't think, unless you're going for a little bit of sort of team value play, but he's not going to score the points. So you probably want him in your starting side scoring points in that first one there. Let's move on to our second team. So there's obviously a few guys that we need to look at. But for the most part, we know where the value is in the Brisbane Heat. Strikers here. So kind of got in a general idea here. Will Darcy Short get back to the top of the order? Or will he be in the middle of the order there? Not exactly sure on this one here. Very similar to that for the Heat at this stage. We'll see if there's any issues in their lineup compared to what's in the game as well. But you've got Jake Weatherall, who didn't play, hardly played last year, who could potentially be somewhere at the top as well. You got Lynn in there about that 3, 4, 5 mark. Harry Nielsen is kind of in the squad at the moment just because, the options are kind of slim. I would like to see, you got a couple of these fringes here that all could play their role for sure. Henry Hunt opens in their longer term stuff and also their 50 over stuff. So how he sort of comes into this one is going to be interesting. He played a couple of games last year as well, so we'll look at all these guys in a second. But you got Baisley in there. You'd expect Rashid Khan to bat fairly high as well. Just looking at this lineup here, and does Doggett, Thornton, and Wes Agar play? Do they play the three paceys? A lot of time they usually do, but when you have a very short batting lineup, can you go Menenti at 8? Rashid Khan at 7, and then you've got guys like Baisley and Nielsen at 5 and 6, or are you switching out one of those two guys for Henry Hunt or one of these other guys in the fringes list? It's a interesting lineup there, and I think they might fall a little bit short with the bat at times. Their bowling seems to be really strong, but the batting could be in a little bit of strife with Kerry and also Travie Head away with Aussie duties in that one. So let's change the filter there for the Adelaide strikers, and we'll start with our keepers. Obviously, we've got Kerry, who's going to be out for the most of the year, and then it's likely to be Harry Nielsen. So you'd imagine he keeps that spot unless they end up having another keeper slot in. But unfortunately for him, the 12 matches only hit the 20 average. So you'd say there that there's only really room for improvement, but that remains to be seen. And with so many value wicket keepers, I'd say it's probably worth leaving Nielsen out, especially if he's going to bat a little bit lower around that 6 or 7 mark there. For the batting, okay, Matty Short. These guys play one game in the first round, so something to look at, obviously, not just from round 1, but round 2, they have the double game, which is super important, obviously. So have a look at that with this squad, that's for sure. But Short's going to be a great captaincy option in game 2, given how well he played last year at a 78.8 average. Chris Lynn was really good last year. I doubt that he could have much of an improvement on that. So you're paying, you're paying for what you get there. James Baisley had a cracker of a BBL, his best by far. So he'll definitely be in that middle order as well. Will bowl a little bit also. So I can't see him improving on that. So he's probably a little bit too expensive to start things off. You got your Aussie boys there. Jamie Overton, no games last year. Projected to do fairly well, but again, too expensive to start things off. There's way more cheaper guys that have better opportunities there. You got Adam Jose, who actually played all the games last year, so he's definitely someone that could come into contention in that spot that I was talking about there, along with guys like Thomas Kelly, who played 12 of those games. But I do suspect that it would likely be in this stage Adam Jose getting a gig over someone like Thomas Kelly. But it remains to be seen on that one. Obviously, a lot of it's based on injuries and stuff like that, with Jake Weatherald only playing the 4 games as well. So does Jose get the spot ahead of Weatherald? Is it worth spending that 109,000 on Adam if he gets his opportunity? Probably not at this point again, with them having the one game. And it's probably worth seeing. The good thing is with Adelaide is you can see their first game and then make decisions coming into round 2. If you're trading out any of your Heat guys or any other players there for injury and the like, you can see that first game and make your decisions on a few of these guys there. But I'm not sure if I'm seeing Weatherwood as having a lot of value, but we'll have to see, I think, from that first game. And you're likely not going to select these type of guys. Obviously, Darcy Short didn't play very well last year. He has that upside. You can see why with the 39% pickup rate. Harry Nielsen at 11%, given it's he's very, very cheap in that bench sort of wicket-keeping role, which is cool. And then the bowling side, we spoke about those first few guys. Henry Thornton had a cracker year. Wes Agar was solid again. Rashid Khan is where you're going to get the value to start things off for the year at 132k. So I think from round 2, he's probably a must-have. He could go nuts, and he would be, if you couldn't captain Matt Short, if you couldn't get him into your side, then I think Rashi would be a very, very good option to captain in that second round there at 132,000. That's his worst year by far at a 42.9 average there. And then you got Boise. So he played 6 of the games last year. So is he on the fringe in that? Do they pick Menenti? So they kind of split between the both of them. Who's in more form at the moment? It does look like Menenti is more that guy, scoring runs as well, and they could use him as a guy at like sort of number 8, which would be helpful. So yeah, I think it's probably going to be a race between those two again. And if Menenti does get that spot and he's batting sort of 7 or 8, bowling the 3 to 4 overs, then I think he's a guy to bring into the side. He has scored a lot better than this in the past at times for Thunder and stuff when he was there. But I think he's getting better as a player in general, playing more. More Sheffield Shield, more 50 over stuff, and doing a really good job at that. So I think the confidence that he brings from that is going to be very helpful for him here. And then Brendan Doggett was the other one. I sort of had been flirting with him in and out of my side at this point. It just seems like he's going to be one of those guys that's likely going to play majority of the games. Scores solid at 34. Definitely has a little bit of room for improvement at the 106,000 there. So that's, the general idea on all of those players from both those teams, guys. And we'll go through all 8 squads in 4 separate videos, which is going to be cool there. On that one, we will find out a little bit more as we go along. It's hard to see any sort of predicted teams. There's nothing to Google out there. So we're kind of making it up as we go at the moment and kind of basing it off injuries from last year and who's back. And if I was to be picking this team, this is what I would look to doing. But we will find out a little bit more sort of the week before with sort of general teams that have been named, and then obviously on game days in that first round. So I think for the most part, it's about picking for that first round, picking the guys that are definitely going to be there. And then, slotting in certain guys that we think have a little bit of value if they happen to, make that round 1 team. There's no injuries and they've seemed like they've got a role in that squad. Then that's how we'll end up playing sort of the bench emergency guys to round out our teams heading into round 1. But we've got 16 days to go, and it's getting a lot closer. And we'll get those out to you over the next week, and then we'll really delve into certain positions and where the value is for certain positions and how you can kind of get a sort of a good team makeup from there. But thanks for being in this one, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.